If you could unpack that for us to start off with, I'd appreciate it.
Zanella, hi, and thank you very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I think maybe let's locate the conversation in the context of industrial revolutions. So there's been 3 prior to the 4IR, and every revolution seeks to introduce a new experience and a new quality of life for that generation, right? So whether it's steam engine or electricity or automation, technology, IT, and now we have things like Internet of Things, we have digital technology. This is all trying to improve lives and improve efficiencies and effectiveness. How do we make things cheaper? How do we make access much more pervasive to tools and resources that will improve lives and livelihoods? So as Google, as a tech company, our desire and our dream is to see everybody in the world, regardless of which country you're from or your income bracket. We want to see people gain access to the internet, because I'll tell you, the internet is such an enabler, and digital technology is a real equalizer. When you look at young kids and how they just take to technology, it's such an intuitive exercise. And when you look how excited they get, like kids in Africa that come from impoverished communities, when you give them a cell phone or a tablet and start playing around with it, and when you introduce that into the classroom and they have access to all this knowledge around the world that their first world counterparts have, that's when you smile and you say, we have to make it our everyday preoccupation to open access to the world of technology.
If corporate committed to investing in the growth of the continent, what would that mean for our citizens?
I think a real opportunity that we have as a country is a much stronger and a much more equitable partnership between private and public sector. So corporates can only do so much, but I think government also needs to show its appetite for an e-government reality, where they take advantage of technology, they start to gather data, and they use data to actually improve service delivery. So like if you take, for example, COVID, right? So like a lot of people say, for many organizations, digital transformation was a nice to have, and it wasn't top priority. In fact, many CEOs would say that they would have probably relegated it to the desk of the chief information officer, or chief digital officer, and so on. Come COVID, come lockdown, all of a sudden business models are tested. All of a sudden businesses that have bricks and mortar but don't have an online presence cannot trade, because how do you access consumers that are sitting at home? Teaching cannot happen when kids are at home and can't access schools and classrooms. And that's when the likes of us and many other corporates reached out to government and say, we are here to help. Let's take COVID, for example. There was a lot of fake news, misinformation. People were all stuck at home, access, and they were hungry for useful and helpful information, first of all. And they were also looking for productivity tools to enable them to eke out a living. So we went to government and said, we will make our platforms available for the dissemination of useful and helpful and verified information to help fight COVID. And when government has information to disseminate to the citizens, we will help with that. And when government is trying to plan its interventions, we will use our community mobility reports, which are completely anonymous reports of people's movements and so on. We will use it to help government intervene and give services. And then we also said, when it comes to productivity, we will make our products available to help people work from home and to help educators and learners carry on with giving education to people who are actually stuck at home. So we made all those products available, and that's one way of corporates coming to the party and saying, we will use our technology and our products to help government actually make improvement of lives a reality.
And if I look at the list, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I want you to talk through some of the list of things you do for youth empowerment, for women empowerment, for enterprise development and businesses. And you're doing it in South Africa, you're doing it across the continent. The way in which Google thinks, you did not have to. It's not your business to do what you do, but you've made it your business to do what you do. How is it that your company, Google, then has this approach, whereas I think traditional corporate sticks just purely to its business of providing a service that it can actually charge for, and anything else really sticks close to that value proposition. How did you build such a mindset as an organization that sees infinite possibilities even without commercial value?
I think as trite as this might sound, it starts with your mission as a business. The size of your mission actually determines how high you go in terms of commitment, in terms of making a real impact on society. Google's famous mission is to organize the world's information and make it accessible and actually helpful to everybody around the world. Now, when you've got that massive and highly ambitious mission, it is very easy to create a culture and an ethos of helpfulness. So everything that Google tries to do in society is about being helpful. Are we helpful to the end user, by coming up with products that are easy to use, that are affordable, that actually make life much more easier and much more convenient and give you productivity? Are we helpful to our customers to help them access, consumers and brands and consumers come together on the internet? Are we helpful to governments? Are we good corporate citizens that actually use our technology to help improve lives? So I think it actually starts with that. And when we talk about universal access, we're saying, you have to equip people with the right skills. We need to stop talking about Africa's potential and talk about Africa's greatness. Africa is great. Africa just needs to trade with the rest of the world. Africa needs the tools. People know how to make money in Africa. People know how to innovate. We've been innovating for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we've got this ambitious program called Digital Skills for Africa, which is really about equipping millions and millions of Africans with digital skills. And then you also have to say there's a developer ecosystem. Because you need developers to innovate, to renovate, to come up with Africa solutions. Because it's very easy for businesses and organizations around the world through global sourcing to innovate, for the West and then kind of send it out into the rest of the world. But you need to understand local needs and local nuances. And that's when you look at local skills and say, how do we have a thriving, developer ecosystem? We've set ourselves an ambitious target of training 100,000 African developers by end of 2022. So far we have about 15,000 job-ready developers trained, and we have more than 60,000 developers who've been empowered through scholarships and access to training. Now you can't do that alone. So you partner with the likes of Coursera, to come up with easily sort of attainable IT qualifications to get the African youth who have the desire and the skills to actually be certified so they can either get jobs or create jobs. We partner with the likes of, the Youth Employment Services, again, to try and get young Africans into job opportunities. So there's a lot. And then there's things like Google for Startups Accelerator, program, which again works with startups and say, how do we help accelerate your development? How do we equip you with skills? And how do we connect you with markets? Now, for that to happen, there has to be a single-minded mission that actually propels all the activities.
And the kind of thinking that I think I see is also free thinking. You are boundaryless in terms of providing what your capability is into the world. So, and I think if organizations could think in that way, where they see an ability to take what they do and throw it out and say, where do we put it in and solve for a market by giving them access to the opportunity to learn? Because what I keep on hearing you say is Africa knows how to solve its own problems. So you're not going out there solving Africa's problems for them. You are actually saying, here's what our contribution is, take it and utilize it because we believe in you, you are innovative, you have everything that you need, and all we're providing is we're plugging in this technology element. So that ability to think freely and to think with abundance, again, I think is a very special trait. And when it comes to International Women's Day, where you are providing women across Africa, how many women, how are you approaching the dilemma of women being left behind?
So in honor of International Women's Day in 2020, we made an announcement that we're renewing our commitment to actually driving women empowerment across the continent. And our target then was about 20,000 women entrepreneurs. As we know, entrepreneurship drives economies, in this country alone, small businesses account for about 47% of the labor force. So if you want to make a meaningful impact, small business is actually quite a good place to really focus. And we decided that our brand of women empowerment should be around workplace readiness, should be about entrepreneurship, should be about leadership as well as technology skills. And we actually announced Women World Training Tour, which focused on about 5,000 women in 20 cities across the continent, and a further 15,000 women will be trained through community-driven initiatives. So this is very exciting for us. And I'll give you one typical example. We were working with a lady in Durban in KZN who had a guest house, and she wanted to grow her business and scale. So we introduced her to Google My Business, which is about taking a bricks and mortar business and turning it into an omni-channel experience, i.e. getting it online. And it's very simple. It's about getting your website, right? So we go to her Google website, and through that, you've got your phone number, GPS coordinates, you can load photos, you can write a description of your product and your business and services. And for the first time, consumers and customers anywhere in the world can actually see your business. And if you spend a little bit of money sort of advertising that, you drive traffic to your website. Now, once you start generating traffic on your website, people leave reviews, positive reviews, glowing compliments, or even negative. And we take those reviews, we use something called Marketing Toolkit, which is an AI-driven solution that turns some of those reviews into advertising material for you. So you now have advertising, you have social media feeds, you get posters, you get banners out of what people are saying about the experience they've had with you. Now, once you've got that, you've got a business, you've got an online presence, you've got adverts. Now you're saying, I'm getting hits from all over the world. How do I proactively market to customers around the world? We've got a tool called Market Finder, which is based on the recognition that small businesses here want to trade with people around the world. So we connect you to markets by giving you data from those markets, whether it's marketing trends, consumer information, supply chain information, distribution, and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, you've taken small businesses and you've helped them scale across the world by getting them online. And in that, it doesn't cost much. It doesn't take a lot of hours to do that. You could actually have a business set up online in a matter of hours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alistair. I mean, we could go on forever, but what I'm wishing, I suppose, for our citizens and for Google is for us as South Africans to feel a sense of hope and a sense of wanting to discover what is available to us as tools that we can utilize, whether we're entrepreneurial, whether we want to grow and learn and develop skills, get employment. I think that for me, I suppose, is my wish. I've got a granny in London. She's 76 years old, and she was telling me how she's advertising her NGO, online, and Google has given her bonus points for free to advertise. So there isn't a lack of opportunity, but I think we need to find that hope again to be able to plug in and find these resources. So I want to say thank you for your time. And if there's anything else, you can close off for us. But for me, I've really appreciated it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zanele. It's been fantastic talking about this. I think maybe I want to end off by saying we are making good progress across the continent, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. There's 1.2 billion Africans on the continent, and only 300 million have internet access. So there's a lot of work to do. We need all of us to, direct our resources and train our guns to uplifting lives. Technology can be the tide that lifts all boats, and I think we need to make that a reality. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Beautiful way to end it off. Till next time. Take care. Welcome to our next panel discussion. It's on the brands we love, but it's an honest conversation about transformation. And I have an amazing panel today, as I said to you earlier on. I look forward to engaging with Khensani and Nobanda from Nedbank, Farai Mubaiwa, who comes from Yes for Youth, Veli Ngubane, who's a founding partner and chief executive of Avatar, and Mzamo Masito, who's the chief marketing officer at Google Africa. Really, I sit behind the screen. I absorb brands every day, and my constant question as a practitioner in the marketing space as well is, who are the people behind these brands and how are they making the decision on how we are represented as a people in South Africa and even in the continent? And I want to dive straight in and start off with Khensani. Khensani, tell me, I love the brand Nedbank. Over the years, of course, I've followed the green, and I want to know, what are your thoughts on shaping and playing the narrative of who we are as a country through the Nedbank brand?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Anele. Really fantastic to be on this panel with some people I absolutely admire. So I think the conversation is going to be really good. Look, I think brands, from a transformation perspective and representing the country that we are, play two roles in my head. One, I think the brands can show society at its best, right? Brands can show and highlight society's challenges in a very authentic manner. And brands, part of showing society at its best is really to refrain from stereotypes, and actually brands play a big role in showing society at its best, right? Because there's an interesting study that I read called The Brands Get Real, which showed that nearly 4 in 5 consumers feel brands can connect people of different backgrounds and beliefs for multiple reasons. One, because we generally carry products and services that appeal to a diverse range of clients, but also because our media presence requires us to have significant media attention. What that means is that we play a big role in showcasing what the type of society we would like to have, in South Africa, globally, on the continent. I find it interesting to this day that you can have an ad with 2 gay men kissing and there'll be, an uproar, but actually that's life, and brands have a role to show life at its best, to show what challenges we have as society, and to almost hold a mirror to us. So I think that's the first bit. The second bit, I guess, in my world, right, as a brand leader, is also in the marketing value chain. So brands play a big role in ensuring that the services that we use transformed partners, so transformed agencies. We use Black-owned agencies, for example. It's great to have someone like Veli from Avatar here. And we, because actually one of the challenges with that, and it's so true for South Africa, I always think that if you look at marketing heads in the country, they're generally Black. I think they're mostly Black. But if you look at agency owners on the other side, they're generally white. And I think that's a challenge for us. So for me, those are the 2 things that I feel like as a brand you can do. It's really around, how do you hold a mirror to society? And at the same time, how do you ensure that you drive transformation in the value chain that delivers these brands to the country?
Thank you, Khensani. I mean, we're going to delve more into some of those topics, especially around showing the aspirational view of who we want to be, not always necessarily who we think we are today, right? So brands help us to move forward. And the executive that sits in that seat and is making this decision, their mindset is very important. Mzamo, do you want to jump in and talk to us about the role of this Black executive and how you see transformation playing out in South Africa?
Thank you. I would agree with Khensani that, let me start with, brand activism is really important in shaping the nation and in shaping the country and in shaping the narrative on equality, equity, diversity. That is important. Now, the Black person who sits in the seat, that is a tough one, particularly if you're the only one amongst the 10 or the 12. I don't think people realize how lonely it is at the top when you're the only one underrepresented group in the group of many who are well represented and privileged. So let's start there. The work is, I first have to work on myself first before work on others, because I have to know myself and I have to be confident in myself, and I have to know who am I before I can sell to others. So I think it starts there. And then after that then is really working hard in making sure that the people we hire are representative of the people we sell to or market to or serve at a profit. So that I have to be deliberate, intentional, and proactive about it. So, but that's the third part is there will be stones thrown, and that you're just gonna have to accept and brace yourself. And there will be stone on both sides. There will be stones from the ones who are protecting privilege, and there will be stones from the ones who you're trying to empower. So there will be stones on both sides. So you're just gonna have to make peace with that. It comes with you being the only one.
Farai, now you work with Yes for Youth, and thousands of youth are sitting out there watching brands and really absorbing hope for themselves and amidst the rising unemployment. What do you think brands need to be doing, and what is the role of brands for these young people?
Thanks so much, Zanele, for that question. I think where we find ourselves in a country is that we're in the thick of an unemployment crisis. Recent stats released the other day show us that the expanded definition of youth unemployment is at 74%. So what this means is that it's no longer business as usual. We are seeing corporates, we're seeing their brands, looking at how do we also play our part in solving this crisis, because we're no longer at a stage where socioeconomic issues are only for government. Corporates and powerful brands have to play a role in how we address these issues. And I think what is so interesting from young people is that there is, and we see this with the 57,000 Yes Youth on the program, there is a sense of pride to say, I am a Nedbank youth. Nedbank is my sponsor. And because of Nedbank, I get a 12-month work experience opportunity. We've got some Google youth who have got access to training and coding. And it's so exciting to hear them say, I am a Google youth. And I think what we're seeing from the Yes side is more and more corporates signing up. We've got 1,500 at the moment. They're signing up not only for the BE benefits of Yes, but because they have to play a part in how do we deal with the unemployment crisis. And what we're getting from the young people is that this work experience opportunity provides them with access to gain skills, access to information, access to chart their own development post this Yes program. And the big push we're getting from brands is that we have to be able to prioritize a sense of purpose. So beyond having a healthy balance sheet, how are we empowering the society? And we're excited to have big brands like Nedbank come on for 1,900 jobs. And these youth placements are critical across the country. So how do we ensure all brands and companies are playing their role to truly deal with this youth unemployment crisis? Because collaboration is the only way we can do it.
Veli, I want you to delve into that and talk to us on these brands that we love. What is the role that they can play in the transformation of our society, the way we think, and what is the responsible thing to do as an agency when you have to manage a brand?
Thank you very much for the question. I think the biggest thing is an acceptance of the responsibility we have as communicators, the responsibility to have a reflective view of society. Now, that is a very important role. We shape the culture in the work that we do. And I think as a creative, that's the first and biggest responsibility that is incumbent on us. And that's why transformation is very important in the space, because it shapes the culture of society. You know, I usually say it's if we made desks or were carpenters, it's not really that apparent who made the table, you know, but with advertising, you can see the insight and you can see the message, which therefore shapes society, you know. So it's very important for the transformation debate not only to be talked about, but to be actioned, to be tracked, and to be reported on, because for us, our product is a reflection of the level of transformation and diversity in that agency.
And we've made progress. I mean, I have spent years cringing when I see the type of adverts that go out that represent us. And my question, like I said in the beginning, is who is designing this? Who is doing this? And who is signing this off? We've made progress, right? Unless I'm a little bit more removed. Have our narratives improved on how we represent Africans?
We are making a better progress. I think we are at a better place. than we were, but I don't think where we should be, and that's why different views and diverse views need to be more heard, because I think at the moment the work is getting better, but it still doesn't get to the core insight that goes beyond what is expected of the different target markets and positions of those target markets. So the more we have a diverse creative, the more we start celebrating the work that works for the different markets, the more we have awards that cater for vernacular work, that cater for work that is really, really reflective of the mood and the culture of the target market. And I think it's a big responsibility for all agencies to make sure that they don't only have Black creatives and Black strategists, but those Black creatives and strategists are actually heard and given the freedom to execute the type of work that works for the market.
Yeah, and that requires a lot of courage. I think I stopped caring. I had to stop caring. It was just too stressful. When that lady was dancing, the airport advert, and the lady dancing while she's cleaning. At that point, I threw the flag in. I said, I'm done. I'm good. They must do what they need to do with this. And being a bank, when I Khensani, is this not a challenge for you as well? Because only so many Black people can smile for the adverts that the institutions feel that they need to put up. Do you find it difficult to be authentic in putting up stuff that represents us accurately?
Yeah, so first I'll start off, and I think that's why Mzamo was giggling, because actually that Joko ad was under my watch.
I'm sorry.
I'm never embarrassed by it, because, that's part of how we learn. But I always tell the story around how when we made that ad, we said to this woman, you're in an airport hangar, you've had Joko, which gives you strength. So you just need to show us that it gives you strength and you're not worried about cleaning a massive airport hangar. And she started dancing. And obviously we loved it and we put it on air. But I think that's the thing about the role of the Black executive. I should have been the person who said, I think Black people are not going to be happy with this portrayal, right? That's actually our role is. So the agency obviously has a role to play, but also us as heads of brands, as Black people, we have a massive role to play. I mean, I'll give a couple of examples just in my last few years at Nedbank. We had a fantastic campaign called Secrets, which was about showcasing 3 different stories around how people have bad money behaviors. We know 2 out of 3 South Africans spend more than they earn. We know that about 3 out of 4 South Africans lose money in a pyramid scheme, which is very scary, like whatever that pyramid scheme looks like. So we wanted to put front and center money conversations, which I think a lot of people are very nervous to talk about. And one of the stories that was put in front of us was a narrative of a young Black man. I think you know the narrative, who lives in Midrand, right? You know the narrative. And I said, Nedbank is not going to be the brand that puts a stereotype, a negative stereotype. We can have challenging money conversations. We can still challenge each other, but we must not do it in a way that negatively portrays a particular race, and especially from a Black perspective. So for me, I strongly believe that, that's our role. Even now, we're working on a script where, and again, it's interesting because that's the bit with Black creatives and Black executives. We can have that conversation and have it openly, where they've put in front of me where someone says, somebody's at a zoo, a Black girl is at a zoo, and she sees a giraffe and she says, look at that tall horse. I'm like, no, we're not idiots. We know what giraffes are. Like, you know what I mean? And it could, maybe it's funny, but it's certainly Nedbank is not going to be the brand that portrays Black people as potentially being idiots. And I think that's such an important role that we as Black executives play, because we can sign these things off, or we can say, no, it's not going to happen, no matter what the agency says to us.
So Mzamo, if we are so behind in terms of transforming our executive tables, how are we going to make progress fast enough to put across really powerful brands?
May I first, before answering your question, because I know this Joko story, that the lesson I learned though from it as well is that there are many ways to be Black. And there are so many ways to be black that we should be very careful to also narrow blackness in a certain way. So because that ad was so polarizing, because there were blacks who liked it, because they get it. There were blacks who didn't like it. But so the lesson I learned from it as well, though, was that there are many ways to be black. And we should be very careful. Because I'm a black person, I cannot represent 60 million or 50 million other blacks' ways of being black. There are 50 million plus ways of being black just in South Africa. Now I work for the entire continent. There's 1.2 billion ways of being black. And I can't represent all of those ways. But all I can do, like Khensani is saying, is figure out a way how to unstereotype blackness, how to make blackness more progressive, how to show the blackness we ideally want, not the blackness that we're known for. But still, there are blacks who love singing and dancing. I hate it, but there are who do like to see blacks singing and dancing. I just think it's an easy way out. So the best way, but I see the point that Khensani is making, that I just, as black as I am going to get it wrong too. Yeah. So we need to also give each other forgiveness and space to get it wrong, to fail. Just because I'm black, it doesn't mean I know everything about being black or all blacks. I mean,
or that you own it.
Yeah, I mean, come on, I don't have a patent or a trademark of being black. I'm just one black out of many. So that for me is the part that I think we need to hold each other. Yes, high levels of accountability, but also we should forgive each other. And we should laugh at, oh, that was a serious F up. Oh, we'll do it better next time. But we should laugh as well.
And before you answer it,
I'm really sorry, to Mzamo's point around, and I love Mzamo, you saying there's different ways to be black, right? Because immediately after we launched that ad, I was going around the country on consumer visits, and I was in the Eastern Cape actually. And when the ladies would hear that I work on Joko, they'd start dancing and be like, oh, we love that ad and stuff, you know. And one of the, interestingly, one of the things they said to me was, we struggle so much with some of the advertising we see about us because it shows us as sad and things are hard and things are rough. And it was just nice to see just an ad where like someone who looks like me is just happy and is, you know. And then I also know, though, because I had to go to I think it was called the Advertising Standards Authority at that time to talk, you know, because we had complaints about it. So I love Mzamo's thing about there's different ways and many ways to be black. But I think just for us, though, as people who head up brands and as agencies, we have a responsibility to make sure that it's not belittling, it's not stereotypical, and it moves the conversation forward.
And so then I wanted to shift the conversation when I go back to you, Mzamo, is that also you're not the only decision maker. You're not the only person that says, okay, I will design this from beginning to end. There are a whole lot of parties that play, you know, that come into play. And I think the question therefore is, what is then the aspirational brand potentially or aspirational opportunities we see in the market? What's good, you know, what's really bad? Because sometimes I yearn to see how we're positioning ourselves, not just for today, but really, you know how you see white people always walking across the beach holding hands, walking out of their retirement house, right? It's always thrown into a better state. So how are we doing this? How are brands throwing us into a better state as a nation that's rainbow colored?
I mean, I recently at Cairns with Google, they announced all-in DEI guidelines on how we speak to Black people, how you speak to Black women, how do you speak to intersectionality? Because also Black has intersectionality. I can be Black, woman, LGBTQ, person with a disability. We haven't cracked that yet because we're so fixated with race only that we forget that there's intersectionality and multiple dimensions of being Black alone as well. And also we haven't issues like, if someone is colored and they identify as Black, do you portray them as Black or do you portray them as colored? If they mix race, what do you portray them as? With all of that, we're not there yet. So we still have a lot of work to do. For example, on language, I did my research on language. And language is an issue in this country in that 9 out of 10 adverts are in English. Only less than 8% of people speak English at home as first language. So that's also something we need to fix. There's language, there's portrayal of intersectionality, which we still need to portray. We haven't done a great job in portraying. There's even portrayal of diversity of LGBTQ. There seems to be a one way of portraying a gay person. And it's actually stereotypical gay person. But there are many ways to be gay and black. And you see, there's a lot of room and opportunity in this space that we haven't yet explored, which we still need to explore. Even how we portray old women or old black males, or how do we portray a male, not the black male who's absent, but how do we portray a male who's present, who's respectful, who doesn't do gender-based violence, but how do we do that in a way that is relevant and it doesn't feel force-fitted? So we still have a lot of work to do. And I must also say, though, that I have had instances where I've had good allies, in the sense that people who are not black, but who have enough empathy to see the things I don't see. Because I've been black for a very long time, so some things I take for granted. Whereas if I take a white person, especially young, and they're curious, hungry, they're a sponge, they will point at the things that I take for granted. And they will point at them, and those might be the things that we actually use in communication that makes more sense.
Yeah, and that's what I love about diversity, is that we must be very careful to anyone listening to this conversation that it's a Black-owned conversation. I think there's a diversity component. When you're sitting back at the office, Khensani, it's diverse around the table, you know, and the ability to ensure inclusion of every person's voice. And inclusion means I need to hear what that other person is saying. So it's beyond just listening. It's listening and taking on board what they have to say, really absorbing and applying it. Veli, but clients I know are not the easiest. How are you finding their appetite for conversation, for challenge, and also to churn and to work things with you, instead of saying, you know, oftentimes this is it, this is what I want, and this is what I need to look like. How are we faring from a client point of view?
I think the big thing there is that we're in a very privileged as position as Avatar, being 100% Black owned. So we find that our clients come to us for that solution, you know, where they've gone to other agencies and they haven't found the level of understanding about the market that we have. So we find our conversations slightly a bit easier. And just to comment on what Mzamo was saying, I think it's very relevant that in the multiple ways of being Black, we also need to understand that I as a person, it's very hard to target me because I've got different, I usually say I've kind of, I'm an LSM tourist, where I'm from KwaMhlabyaLingana, very deep rural. I went to school in the suburban areas. I stayed in the township in Gwelezana near Richards Bay. I went to UCT. So even in one Black person, there's so much diversity. So where do you target me? You know, at which stage? Are you targeting the KwaMhlabyaLingana me? Are you targeting the township me? Or are you targeting the UCT me? So we've got this different. So that's why diversity and understanding that there's no expert on Blackness, because we are evolving. I don't think I'm the same person that I was a month ago to a year ago. So it's constantly having to update that thing, because as we go through life, there's certain new exposures, there's certain new additions, and Blackness is a moving target. So a part of the mistake that a lot of agencies do is think that they've figured out what Blackness is. You know, and that is the biggest mistake, because, as I say, what Blackness was to my target market at 36, 37-year-old last year is totally different now, you know. But at the core of it is respect for the market. I always say that you cannot market to people you don't respect. It's in understanding that those people are growing and evolving. So the market research that you had about a person that I'm the target market for is probably outdated now. So you constantly need to be interested in that market in order to market to that person, because that person is growing, that person is changing, and you need to have people around the table that can keep up with that change. So that becomes a very important thing. But you'll find that clients understand the value of a diverse product, because once the strategy sets it up and once the creative answers to that, and you've got people around the table that can cater to that market, the results are good in the adoption of that message. So clients more and more are learning that diversity, they're learning that a more diverse product is actually good for their communication.
So speak to me of opportunities. What are the opportunities we're seeing now to present brands in a transformative manner, or to enable us further with the transformation conversation?
So, I mean, I think I'm going to go back to my initial point on where I believe the challenges lie, right? Because I think that's where the opportunities lie to move us forward. So firstly, I do think that as brands, and I'm going to start with the marketing value chain, we need to start working with partners and agencies who get it, who understand that it's time for a change, it's time to make an impact. And we can't be people like in 10, 20 years time, marketeers are like, oh, we're the ones we've been waiting for. No, we're the ones we've been waiting for now, right? We need to be making the impact now. So I really think that in understanding what that marketing value chain is, in transforming it, in making sure that we're working with partners who get the issue, who want to change, that's, for me, like a really good opportunity. And it's both. So, and maybe this is where I don't agree with some people. I think it's both in working with agencies like Avatar, who are from the onset fully Black owned, but it's also working with agencies that are like white owned, and working with them to say, actually, you need to change your ownership. You need to change your value chain in terms of from a production perspective. And we've got both as a bank, where it's around fully Black owned agencies who are startup Black owned agencies, as well as agencies who are historically white agencies, and challenging them to say, if you want to be a part of this narrative of this country and to work for our brand, well, then you have to show up in a very different way. And we've had those conversations. I think the second opportunity, I mean, I think about, and we spoke a little bit about purpose, I think Farai mentioned it. I think as brands, living our purpose is even more important, right, than ever before. Whether you read, like many studies will show you that brands that live their purpose, not just in what they say, but in what they do, in what they offer to clients, generally grow faster than most brands. I think we've seen that with the Unilever Sustainable Living brands. So we're quite clear as a bank what our purpose is. I think our challenge and our opportunity is to really live it. So our purpose is to use our financial expertise to do good, which is around positive outcomes for society. That can't just be what we say publicly. It can't just be CSI. It has to be actually the products and services that we put on the table. It has to be in the marketing and the comms that we do. So we strongly believe, for example, which is linked to our purpose, that as South Africans, we've got bad money behaviors, and bad money behaviors. I think a part of the issue from a country perspective, we've got many issues, but that's just one of them. And as a brand, we are committed to putting that front and center in front of consumers, no matter how difficult or challenging that conversation is for them. We're going to have it, and I think that's the opportunity for brands. And then the last bit, is to look at transformation beyond the scorecard. It's very easy, right? As Nedbank, we are level 1. We've been level 1 for the last 3 years. It could be like, yeah, great, let's rest on our laurels. I think firstly, as the marketing executive of the bank, I want to understand beyond the overall Nedbank scorecard, how is marketing performing? Because that's where I've got ownership and where I can transform and stuff. But also then to say, okay, beyond just, these numbers, what can I do in terms of people I hire to come into my team? And to here we've mostly focused on race, but we understand that diversity and inclusion is actually much broader. We had a conversation 2 weeks ago through Gay Pride Month with one of our gay colleagues around how the brand shows up in the space. And they said to me, Khensani, you can't just put the gay flag on the brand thing, and then you think that's it. Like, what's our stance? How are we talking today? Are we, so those are the things that can't just be the flag. Like, how are you really showing up? So I do think there's opportunities, and to continue as brands to showcase the type of society we want. I'm really proud, and I always brag about the things that we do well, right? I'm also open about the things we don't do well. But I'm always proud that we had in 2017 a big brand ad that had a trans woman in it. And that's very rare for like big brands to do stuff like that. And as brands, that's the opportunity that we have. It excites me actually, Zanele, because it's really around, for me, showing just how diversity can grow people, grow brands, and grow this country. And I love being part of that.
Mzamo, let me hand over to you. And then Farai, come in and as well and talk to me about opportunity creation for young people and what it actually means.
I definitely agree with Khensani that I always say to my team that transformation is not a revolution, because revolutions are unstable and they don't last. I'm looking for evolutionary, incremental, positive progress. To do that, it means we're going to have to focus on the things that are not sexy. Like when you go through the value chain, you look at production, the cast. Now, these are things that people don't see. You're looking at casting. You are making decisions on casting. You're looking at who the director is. You're making decisions on why it's not a black female director, or why it's not a female director for once. Why are you always giving me male directors? You go in and look at, no, we chose this setting. Why this setting? Why this color? Now that's not the stuff that people see, but that is where the greatest opportunity is in the stuff that no one sees. Everyone sees the output, not the input. And our job, we are actually in the input that produces the great output. So we need to be more obsessed with the inputs rather than the output is the output, but the input is what makes it great. So that's the first part. I agree with Khensani that if we get involved because love is in the detail, just as much as hell is in the detail. So we are in the detail, and we need to really get involved in the detail until it becomes a culture. Like, for example, at Google now, like even our global CMO, if you show her script and immediately in the script, black people are dancing or a woman is pregnant in a kitchen, that script is killed. It doesn't matter whether the idea is great or not, but it's to send the message that here we don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that for me will be, the opportunities are in the detail. We just need to work on the detail. Slowly, progress will come, but it's not going to happen overnight.
And to be honest, the progress is welcomed. I mean, I remember when I was at Classic FM so many years ago, and Classic FM was a completely white, old male, very old brand. And when we changed the color, nobody complained. Everybody was excited to see young black women performing. It was nobody cared what they sang anymore, but we were excited. We celebrated black artists, Indian artists, young artists, old artists, children, and that was what diversity was about. So inclusion of young people is absolutely key. And Farai, you wanted to lean in on the conversation?
It's really, really interesting for me to hear these marketing experts talk of how they are so conscious in how they navigate. And that's especially important because trends are showing us that young people like myself are not brand loyalists. And if we do become a loyalist to a brand, it takes a lot. One of the factors we look at specifically are what are the sustainability of that brand and what is the socioeconomic impact of that brand. And that's why it is so easy for young people, whether it's via Twitter or Instagram, to be very critical of brands who don't have a socioeconomic role, to brands who are only focused on the bottom line. And we also see that with our Yes Youth as well. Every Yes Youth receives a smartphone that is preloaded with apps. Once the youth complete the program, the smartphone is theirs. And it's been so interesting in doing alumni drives with these youth. Only 24% of them are reachable. Now, what that means is that only 24% of them have kept the number that they had when they started the YES program. The rest of them have moved on to other phone numbers, which means they've moved on to other service providers. So we then have to ask ourselves, what are service providers doing to ensure that they retain that brand loyalty of that youth? And we are trying to encourage Yes Youth as well to say, retain your phone number for employment purposes. But we know that as young people, we are not brand loyalists. And I think that's really important, especially if we look at the African continent we live on. We have got over 230 million young people between 15 to 24. Africa's got the youngest population in the world. We have got what they call the demographic, the dividend, and we are now in this economic window of opportunity. And this means corporates have to realize, like what I said earlier, that it's no longer business as usual, but to say, here is this customer base that is incredibly huge. How do we maximize them? And not just selling products to them, how do we create opportunities for them to be empowered? And I think what I'm really, really excited about, what the trends are showing us, is that more and more corporates, and you can see in this conversation here today, more and more corporates are paying attention to say, what sort of languages are we communicating? How are we communicating? What message are we sending out? How are we defying the narrative that Africa is poor and has no hope? And how are we showing that there's so much more to this continent and to its people? And over and above that, how are we creating opportunities for this youth boom to be empowered? Because the reality is that if we don't upskill, empower, and educate young people, and if we look even in the South African context, this will be an economic burden. So it's great to have these conversations to see not only from the narrative perspective, but also from the action perspective.
I don't know who wants to lean in and talk a little bit about inclusion and the Fourth Industrial Revolution Challenge.
Can I quickly speak on that from the Yes perspective? Every Yes Youth, or majority of the Yes Youth, receive a smartphone, and that smartphone is preloaded with zero-rated learning apps. And I'm such a big fan of the smartphone because in comparison to the rest of the country, only 41% of South Africans have got a smartphone. And what's even worse is that only 8% of South Africans have got a desktop at home. Now, what that shows us is that our country just doesn't have access. And we know with the smartphone, you've got access to opportunities, access to information, you've got learning and earning tools. And it's been so important for us to say, not only should we give youth a 12-month work experience opportunity, we have to give youth access because we have to empower them to be able to find opportunities post the programs. And it's been interesting because Yes, it's been in operation for 134 weeks now, if I'm not mistaken. And we've got 25 work readiness modules that are preloaded onto one of our apps. And those modules have taken so many different iterations. And the reason is because we've said, unemployed young Black people are not a homogenous group. So we have to have different tools of learning for them. We want them to gain 4IR skills, but it doesn't mean that a module full of text is going to apply to everyone. It means we've got to blended learning.
Maybe Veli, you can speak to us about what are some of the solutions that you are creating and how are they living in this world of young people and in this world that now requires technology to be the main source of access.
Right. I think one of the positive legacies, if I can say that, of COVID is the catalyzation of digital adoption, or the need for that. I talk about an example where my aunt back in Lingana, when there was lockdown and she couldn't go to church, she was crossing over to TD Jakes in America to consume. So you'll find that when there is a pressing need and there's a digital solution, people will migrate towards that. Now, there are conversations about how data is expensive, but you'll find that when you really want to listen to that TD Jakes on that Sunday, you will find the means, to listen to TD Jakes because it fulfills your need. And what technology is doing is fulfilling that need. Now, this linked to the conversation that we're having is very dangerous for untransformed brands and untransformed agencies, because what technology does is it gives people a voice and it gives people an opinion and they can share it immediately. Now, with more people getting onto those platforms, brands that are untransformed and agencies that are not transformed are running out of time. Now, there's a commonality between the H&M Monkeygate and the Click saga. both those adverts were not billboards. They were not on TV. They were online adverts that shifted public sentiments offline. Monkeygate wasn't even a South African ad, but it influenced the world in its revolt against H&M. The Clicks advert was an online advert that got into the opinion of social media, and it became so. With more people being able to respond to brands, with more people being able to question adverts, whether it's a banner, whether it's online, whether it's in your website, wherever your communication is, brands that think they can still get away with work that doesn't have the right insight will suffer. Because if my aunt is on Facebook and on TDJ, suddenly you've got someone that has got the power to question, is this ad relevant for me, and does it offend me? Now, brands that don't have transformation and don't have a diverse view on the table are in the biggest danger, because technology has given so much power to the consumer. And as we've seen, brands can no longer get away with work that is not insightful or that is offensive. When I even hear or I see an advert that talks about transformation, talks about the empowerment of women, my immediate interest is to go and see if your organization is transformed, if what you are putting out there you are actually living. And you can quickly get exposed. I just have to take a screen grab of your exco and say, your message is this, but look at your own organization. So brands and agencies have got no way to hide when people have got the power of technology, which is now increasing. And that power is in your hands. That power is immediate. We look at what's going on now. People have the opinion of legal experts because they've got that power in their hands. They can express themselves. Even if you're not a lawyer, you can have an opinion against the constitutional court.
What I think is your biggest tool as an organization is authenticity, authentically wanting to walk the journey to transformation. Mzamo, I think Google for me is a brand that we all admire. I hugely admire it. Are there systems in place in the organization that enable it to be true to itself as a brand, and in somehow that authenticity comes across? And how are they handling the continent?
I think where we started now, and since I've been at Google, has been how do you become part of the solution? I think the key word we use is helpfulness. How do you become helpful without being condescending, without wanting to be a savior? Because Africans don't need a savior, and Africans don't need sympathy. Africans need partners and empathy. So how do we start there first? Then the second thing is we think about is 4IR inclusion is actually requires getting involved with the basics. The first one is network infrastructure. How do you make sure that people have access to 4G, 5G, fiber? And those are basic stuff. That's not fancy, sexy stuff. It's just network infrastructure. And that is government in partnership with telcos and OEMs, everyone getting involved in making sure everyone has access to 4G, 5G, fiber, all of that, ADSL, you name it. The second one is affordable smart devices. How do we become part of the solution in launching a $30 smart device with Vodacom, with MTN, with Orange or Safaricom in the continent? How do we do that with Globe? All of these telcos and Samsung or Huawei, you name it, as in how do we partner with them to distribute more devices in every child's hand or youth's hand, a smart device? The third one is around data pricing. How do we reduce data pricing? How do you have data plans on YouTube or YouTube Shorts or TikTok or Instagram Face that is at an affordable? How do you zero rate? And a lot of people don't realize that telcos actually have been really responsible citizens in zero rating educational apps. Most universities and educational schools have zero rated educational content, which people don't always know about. How do you give that access to everyone? The fourth one is education. We cannot run away from the fact that we are not producing the best education and graduates in this country alone, just South Africa alone. So we need to fix our education system to produce the best Black STEM, whether it be STEM or STEM student. We don't have many at the moment. So we need that. So to get to the basics, how do we become part of digital skills? We get involved in digital skills. How do we improve? So you see there's a lot that even as a company, its core job is not devices, it's not network infrastructure, but you have to earn the right, like Veli says, to be critical of things, to promote purpose or to promote pride. Like Khensani said, you can't be putting Pride Month because you're not gay 30 days out of the 350, 6 days. You are gay 350 and a quarter. So how do you make sure that you earn the right to champion things and you fix your insight first, like which is what Google now they're doing, fix insight, offer the guidelines, then open platform the guidelines, give them to everyone to use to improve all of that. And then once you've done that, perhaps then we have become part of the solution and we are also part of moving us forward and progressing, whether before our inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, we've just recently published in some parts of the country where you have guidelines even for agencies, like how do you get inclusive work? Let's debate it. Let's discuss it. Here's what we know. Here are the mistakes we've made. And you announce your mistakes publicly. We've made these mistakes. We've looked at our data. We've seen how we portray Black people. We've seen how we portray women. We're now going to change. But if you don't do that, then you don't change. So there's a lot of stuff, that internal work that is required so that you earn the right to speak.
And Khensani, I think you probably will be closing us off really. Sorry, Mzamo, I thought that was very, very, very good to hear. I think for me, I know that there's something in the machinery at Google at the back, you know, that enables it. And when you talk about having the perspective of how do we help, you know, how do we make a difference, you know, it'll baffle you that corporates generally are about the business of corporate. You know, having philosophy, having values is something that's put up on the wall, you know, and they brainstormed, but there's a lack of authenticity to be part of this country in a meaningful way. So how has Nedbank gotten it right, Khensani, from your experience there or from the other organizations? What do you feel is the catalyst to leading and creating an organization that fundamentally knows it exists in South Africa or in Africa to make a difference to African people, and it strives to do that in its fabric? You know, what would you believe is the key ingredient that turns the ship into that direction?
Yeah, look, I think first, Anele, I mean, we're not perfect as a bank, but we certainly know what we're trying to achieve and are very clear around what we need to, you know, impact from society perspective. I think the thing that I found powerful at Nedbank that I probably maybe haven't seen in other organizations, maybe I've seen it at Unilever, as a starting point, we are very clear that we will not be a sustainable organization in an unsustainable continent. There's no Nedbank if there's no Africa. If Africa is not successful, if South Africa is not successful, then Nedbank won't be successful. That fundamental belief is actually what drives a lot of what we do, because what it then means is that we try and ensure that everything that we do grows, develops, impacts positively. So then the second thing for us is, whilst again I've only seen it at Nedbank, to be honest, and it's around. We're also very clear what our purpose is. We have our tellers at the bank who will tell you this is our purpose. So that's how it, you know, at the level it goes down to. And what that means is that, again, we live in everything that we try, you know, our client interactions, our products and services, we try and ensure that our purpose is infused into that. And I can tell you, we're nowhere near where we need to be. We're probably at 30% of where we need to be. And part of my role within the bank is to ensure that the entire value chain is very clear, that our purpose can't just be lived 30% of the time. It has to be 100% of the time, because because our purpose is to use our financial expertise to do good, positive outcome for society. It then means that whether it's the ad that we're doing or the product that we're putting out or this, it means we have to make sure that it's got a positive impact on society. And if it doesn't, we shouldn't be doing it. And we don't do it 100% of the time, as I said, but we're still learning. And then it also has to be championed, I think, from the top. I found it very interesting last year with Black Lives Matter, which is obviously a movement that didn't just, although it started obviously in the US, became a global thing. And our chief executive, Mike Brown, said to me, and we're chatting at Group Exco, he says, I want to say something about Black Lives Matter. It just feels like, especially in this country where it started being picked up. And he said, I really want to talk about this. What should I, and we started having a really good conversation about what Black Lives Matter means, what it means for us. So then he starts to learn and understand it. And so the leadership bit is very important. If your leader is looking at all of these things and going, these people are dramatic or what, it won't
It's
matter.
got nothing to do with us.
Got nothing to do with us, as a bank and all of that. So the leadership bit is really important. I think those are just maybe the three things that I want to highlight from an overall organizational perspective in terms of how you really drive the change that you want to see. But maybe just a final point on the digital. I find the digital so challenging for us. I had a lot of sympathy for clicks, by the way, because I could see how that ad could have gone on without the clicks CMO or head of marketing, whoever it is, having seen it. Because actually, the way we work in marketing, if you look at from a TV advertising perspective or outdoor or print, generally the head of marketing of the organization signs it off. But digital is so quick, so fast. There's a lot of stuff that's going online. So as head of marketing, you generally don't get to see these things. You don't get to approve them. In fact, forget head of marketing. You're finding generally that senior marketeers in the organization don't see these things and they go online. And that's why this story cannot be championed just by the head of marketing or the senior people in the organization. It actually has to be the entire marketing team, because that's how you make mistakes like the clicks one.
Yeah. So we've got a transformation invitation that we need to send out. If there are a lot of leaders that I'm coming across and I'm having conversations with CEOs, literally weekly, and it's a conversation around, I want to step into this transformation thing. I want to be able to do it. I want to change things. I've been trying. One CEO yesterday said to me, I've been trying, and clearly I don't have the right networks. And I wanted to laugh. Shame. He actually thought he would even have the network. No, you should not have thought you would have had them. Did not even have the network. So what is the invitation that we can hand to people who want to take the journey into transformation? Because we're thrilled about it. It's been something that we've always known is important for our country. It's important for sustainability of organizations. How do we invite people onto this transformation journey and make them feel comfortable that they are coming on board right now? What would you say? And I'll go to you, Veli, and then to you, Mzamo, and then we'll go to Farai.
I think the biggest thing and the first step is in accepting that there is a problem, right? And accepting that it's not a problem for Black people, it's not a problem for white people, it's a problem for all South Africans, that we need to all contribute to the transformation of the society, right? So that's a big thing. I find that a lot of people that benefited from the policies of apartheid want to brush that under the carpet, right? And we hear struggle stories of, I also suffered. And I usually say, suffering from Bryanston is different from suffering from Kwamakuta, so it's not the same suffering, right? So let's start there. Let's start that you were born into a system that benefited you because of the color of your skin, whether you were supportive of that regime or not. But the mere fact that you got born in a certain place, you got the privilege of a certain education, you got the privilege of certain exposure. You saw an uncle that was a lawyer. You saw an uncle that was a doctor. For some of us, we haven't seen that. So just the privilege of seeing something that you want to become from just a world view, you traveled. So I think a majority of the people that benefited from that system need to start by accepting that they did in order to be able to fix. Now, it was a legislated exclusion of the majority, and I think a legislated inclusion needs to be monitored. Now, I am a chairman of the IAB Transformation Council, and part of my job there, what I've said to the guys, and the board there is saying we must stop talking about transformation emotionally, and we must start talking about transformation factually. So we're going into a very big research component, partnerships with people like Kantar and global study and a census that looks at where we are. Because the question to are we transformed or are we not transformed shouldn't be just an emotional one, and it shouldn't be just my opinion. It should be a factual one, right? If we look at the landscape, we should be able to know from an academic perspective where we are. So that's the biggest thing, how you get involved. Now, for me, it's inexcusable to say, as an executive or a leader of an organization, how do I get involved? When we've got an over 70% problem in youth unemployment, the problem is literally walking around. It's not. It doesn't take a far drive to say, how are we giving opportunities? How is my organization more inclusive? But just to wrap up, I think it comes from an acceptance that there's a problem. It comes from acceptance from the people that have benefited from a system that still prevails now. The whole argument that is 30 years later, the problem is still societal, is still in society. So it's to say, I accept that I benefited, and I accept that I want to listen to people and not to be defensive and not to think that it's reverse apartheid or whatever. I've got the responsibility to change the society, not only for myself, but for the future of this country.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like I'm being put under pressure to close a little bit. Thank you so much, Veli. Khensani, I loved your views. Thank you so much for what you shared previously. And Farai, thank you for all that insight into young people. Mzamo, I do have a minute. Tell me, what is your invitation for brands to join the journey towards transformation?
So I would say the first one is that the people who are in these positions of power and influence must do the work first. So the first thing is, it is not Khensani's job as a Black woman to nurse my Black male underdeveloped fragilities. It's not her job. It's my job to get out of those fragilities and sensitivities and learn how to be a better man. It's not her job to teach me that she can be an ally, but it's not her job. Same, I'm Black. It's not my job to teach white people. I don't have that job. I've got too many Black issues to deal with. So they must also get off their asses, be uncomfortable, be vulnerable, go out, stretch your circle, make the circle bigger, your circle. That's not something I'm going to help you with. So that's, for me, it's everyone must just be willing. And this cuts across gender, race, sexual orientation. Everyone must be willing to be uncomfortable. Everyone must be willing to be tested. And at the moment, I see too much comfort.
Yeah. Well, I've never, in all my years, and I have had many years of having these conversations, never have I heard such courage in how even we are talking about this topic. It began with us, where we are constantly very, very fearful of just saying it as it is. Mzamo, what you've said, in all my 25 years as a practitioner, I've never heard a Black male say, never. So you really broken ground for me today. Continue these conversations, continue sharing this courage. And I think when we do it, others will follow. Thank you so much. I love these panel discussions. The day is just, it's not over yet. More to come. Please stay with us.
Rich taste that says you've arrived. Uyingakar. Living a life of illusion, leaving your finances on the rocks. In this world of bazothina bantu,